I what 52% of Democrats now approve of George W. Bush. How, Sway? How why? Listen, this all connects together, right? This shows you when I talk about how ignorant conservatives are. By the way, I got an invitation. don't repeat it because I don't think he understands what he's getting himself into. I got an invitation to go on Jesse Lee Peterson show on Newsmax TV, and I'm like, bruh, really? Really? You really want to bring me on your show? I only have one major challenge. I have a major challenge that I have to avoid using some key words while I'm talking to this guy. If you guys don't know who Jesse Lee Peterson is, just don't go now. Go after the show and go Google YouTube Jesse Lee Peterson. He's the reverend, the black guy who says everything Fox News wants to say but can't say because they're white. But he invited me on the show. So anyway. The point is, like, as much as I think conservatives are ignorant and intentionally obtuse and hypocritical and it will insert any other word that you want to describe them there, it blows me the hell away that we have been feeding, and by we, I use collective pronouns sometimes, but it's not we as in you and I. It's the Democratic establishment and their media outlets that are feeding this same level of idiocy in the Democratic circles. There was a time where we could really brag, probably arrogantly so, about being more intellectual and smarter, generally smarter than conservatives. But there's a whole new level of ignorance that has come to the Democratic Party, and it blows me the hell away. If you can justify on any day of the week supporting George W. Bush at 52% of Democrats support George W. Bush, that just shows you that you've allowed your hatred of Donald Trump, which is legitimate, right? Donald Trump, he should go down in history as the most hated man in history, in American history. He is an oaf. He is a buffoon. He's a clown. But you know who's worse? George W. Bush. You know why he's worse? Because he's killed thousands of American troops. But that's not all. How many hundreds of thousands of Iraqi citizens? How many hundreds of thousands of Afghani citizens? How many thousands of lives have been destroyed because that moron wanted to go out there and stretch his legs with the neocon worldview and look for weapons of mass destruction that they knew were not there in the first place. I don't care if he's amiable and if he's lovable and he has charisma. I don't care if he has more empathy than Donald Trump. I don't care if he understands the power of an apology. Hey, George W. Bush should never be rehabilitated. He should always be known as the man that broke the world for an entire generation. But yet we have 52% of Democrats who now see him favorably, which is only the result of their hatred of Donald Trump, which is justified. But can you not walk the fine line of the dark arts of the dark side? I mean, without going over to the dark side, can you not walk that fine line and realize that we should give Donald Trump hell every step of every inch of every hour of every day? He deserves the hell that he's getting, but that doesn't mean we're going to like George W. Bush now. People saying, oh, I'd rather have George W. I would not rather have George W. Bush right now. I'm sorry. You know why? Because George W. Bush broke the Middle East, the entire world. This is not hyperbole, people. I'm trying not to work myself up too much here because I'm chilling and I'm gonna go to sleep after this. But I'm trying not to. But do you realize that there are, and I keep saying this, and I'm going to say it almost every time this conversation comes up, there are children who were born on 9/11 who are almost old enough to fight the war in Iraq that is still going on. And that is because of George W. Bush. And it's being fueled. It's being fueled by this hyper. And this is. I don't want to even finish this sentence because our hyper adversarial posture towards Donald Trump is justified. But the enemy of my enemy is not always my friend. The enemy of my enemy could be George W. Bush. I would take George H.W. Bush because he had enough sense to not go into Baghdad. He actually had enough sense to say we actually need to raise taxes because that's how he ended up losing. I mean, if you're gonna want a loan for a Republican, don't let it be George W. Bush or Ronald Reagan. For the love of God, people. This entire economic paradigm that we're fighting to get away from was started by by Ronald Reagan. But you have people who are longing for Ronald fucking Reagan. Get the entire hell out of here. What is wrong with you Democrats? Now I don't have the luxury. I don't have the luxury because sometimes your ignorance is not exposed because you have a greater ignorance in front of you. George W. Bush was the greater ignorance. He was the Donald Trump of 2000 to 2008. He was the dumbest man on the planet. Right. And so it covered up a multitude of sins. It covered up a multiplicity of ignorance in the Democratic Party. Right. And then we had this wonderful speaker and this grand orator by the name of Barack Obama who came through. And that still kind of covered up the amount of ignorance that was in, but you started to see the hypocrisy of Democrats, but you didn't see the ignorance of Democrats until now, where people who spent their entire life's work and energy opposing a man because he was destroying, not just for political reasons, man. We oppose George H.W. Bush because of the things that he did to damage the world that it's going to take an entire generation to recover from. We had legitimate reasons to oppose him, and now some of those same people have a positive view of George W. Bush. What is wrong with you? It is possible. It is very possible because I'm doing it right now to think that Donald Trump should be impeached, to think that Donald Trump should never have been president, to think that he's going to go down in history as the greatest embarrassment to American history, to American democracy, shit, to democracy in general. I mean, hundreds of years from now, thousands of years from now, when America's no longer around, people are going to look back and look on the experiment of democracy and say, if it was possible for free people to elect an oaf like Donald Trump, maybe we shouldn't actually experiment with democracy. Donald Trump is going to go down as the greatest mistake made by America, and hands down. However, you know who's going to be right after him? Who's going to actually be worse? George W. Bush. Because there's a possibility we'll still be fucking fighting those same fights 100 years from now.